Border Control and Registration of Persons, Major General Gordon Kihalangwa. The Agriculture and Livestock Committee will also be vetting Professor Hamadi Idiboga, who has been nominated for the Principal Secretary position, Agricultural Research. The Transport, Public Works and Housing Committee will also be doing the vetting of Mr. Charles Hingamoura, who has been nominated for Principal Secretary, Housing and Urban Development. In the mini chambers, County Hall, that is Parliament Buildings, today, Wednesday, the 21st day of February 2018, the Ministry or the Committee on the Defense and Foreign Relations will be vetting some nominees, some for the Principal Secretary position and others for Ambassador.
Because this money is not reaching the poor of the poor, simply because of the delivery mechanism that's being used by our government.
Okay.
I support this. I strongly support this petition.
Okay, I've changed my mind. Therefore, I'll give 2 more members because I see there is a lot of interest. Not all of you will speak, but let's have the member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm a member of the Labour Committee, and we noted with great concern about the matter that is being raised by the honorable member. And as a committee under the Society Chairman Wario, we are already putting in place certain things that will facilitate, one, the operation of the funds from the NSSF to be dispersed well and on time. And also we noticed that on the other issue that concerns the monies that should be going to our people within the various places, there was a problem because there was no regulation. We have been able to call the officers from the ministry, and we are on time trying to ask them that we put a proper regulation in place, and then to look for proper modalities of oversighting the disbursement of that money, so that even the most remote person in a particular place is able to access the money. Right. So moving forward is something that I believe the committee under the chairmanship of Wario has the capacity, and we shall be reporting back to Parliament exactly on our progress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Bowen Kangogo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and for giving me this opportunity also to keep my input on the petition by the Honorable Alois Lantoimaka. Mr. Speaker, the social assistance program is very important program, Mr. Speaker, especially to the vulnerable in our communities. The old, the widows, and also the orphans. Mr. Speaker, like the members who spoke before me, the way this money is given out, Mr. Speaker, the channel, it's been a very difficult, especially for us who are from the remote sides of the country, Mr. Speaker. You will find that we had suggested even before, Mr. Speaker, if there is a way they can be done through maybe the old postal offices or even at the chief's offices, so that you get the old people access nearby. Because there is no need for a very old man of 70 years, Mr. Speaker, traveling for over 100 kilometers to collect 2,000 shillings. And then number 2 also, Mr. Speaker, even for the old members of the community, currently they are talking about 70 years. There is need to have them at 60 years because a 70 years old men and even the 60 years old men, they deserve, Mr. Speaker, they are very old. So there is need to reduce even the age to 60 years, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Okay. So next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 21st, 2018, morning sitting. Annual reports and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the financial year 2016-2017. Capital Market Authority, Council of Governors, Ministry of Defense, and Teacher Service Commission. Number 2, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Nursing Council of Kenya for the year that ended 30th June 2017 and the certificate therein. 3, Mr. Speaker, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year that ended 30th June 2016 and the certificate therein. Kipkelion West constituency, Bomet Central, Fafi constituency, Mogotio constituency, Narok South constituency, Kajiado North, Uriri, Kitutu Masaba, Bondo, Ruaraka, Kajiado West, Makadara, Kasarani constituency. And Mr. Speaker, it's very, very important that members look at their audited accounts from the Auditor General of their respective constituencies, so that they can liaise with their fund managers.
Very well. Let's have Honorable Patrick Mariru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following report on the table of the House. Today, Wednesday, February 21st, 2018, the report of the 48th session of the ACP Parliamentary Assembly and that fourth session of the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly held in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, from December 13th to 20th, 2017.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Leader of Majority Party.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that pursuant to the provisions of Article 127, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the National Assembly appoints the following members of the National Assembly and senators to the Parliamentary Service Commission. A, under subsection 2C, Roman 1, the Honorable Eden Kainan, MP, the Honorable Naomi Shaban, MP, the Honorable Senator Beth Mugo, MP, the Honorable Senator Aaron Cheriot, MP. Mr. Speaker, the House awaits 3 names under Article 127, 2C, Roman 2 of the Constitution. I really indulge you.
Honorable Serone, I really would not know the problem because as I've heard the leader of Majority Party, he has indicated that if the names will be brought before noon, he will place a notice. So I really wouldn't understand. Maybe let me ask the leader of Majority, what is the problem?
Mr. Speaker, there is no problem. The House Business Committee and my colleague Honorable Mbandi is here. The House Business Committee set last night to approve names. And within the reading of Article 127, 2C, Roman 2, the Wiper Party has complied. They have brought a name. But the NASA coalition, the bigger brother, because NASA is a small brother, the bigger brother asked for a timeout to go and do consultation between last night and today, 11 a.m. So if they don't bring any good news in as far as the House Business Committee is concerned, Mr. Speaker, at least I can confirm the nominee for the Wiper party I'll read before 12:30. But you know we are magnanimous. And when there's problem in your other brother's house, you don't increase the fire. So we allowed NASA to go and consult. Some of their principals are out of the country. They have to do, trunk calls. They have to look for the senior
You are
partner.
saying they need to do teleconferencing.
Teleconference between the Honorable Raila Odinga, who is in Harare, the Honorable Kalonzo, who is maybe in Yatta, in his farm, the Honorable Mutula, the Honorable Watangula, maybe he's in the constituency in Bungoma, and the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, who might be in Sabatia. So that teleconference is what has made the 3 names from our colleagues to come. But at least, Mr. Speaker, House Business Committee chaired by the Speaker confirmed last night that the Wiper Party in its nomination of Ben Momanyi complied with the standing orders and the Constitution. But it doesn't harm anybody if the leader of minority asked for, and the leader of the minority and the minority whip asked for a timeout. Their time is running. It's now, I think, 10 o'clock. They have only 1 hour to decide whether it is Ben Momanyi or it is Saronei or it is Chris Wamalwa. Then they tell us from the Senate who is coming. That's why I asked you, because, Mr. Speaker, we have serious welfare issues. And we want these PSC members to take their seats. We can't hold, we're holding a hot potato for the last 2 months. Personally, I'm not ready. I have other important, there's the budget policy statement, there's many issues, there are bills. So with this house, we can't go around, with the names.
Leader of majority, I
So,
don't
Mr.
want you
Speaker, I want to tell Saronei.
You will have your shot to
Yes, I want to
debate
tell
for a long
Honorable
time.
Saronei to hold his horses. If they bring a contrary information to Ben Momanyi before 11, they have 1 hour, well and good, we will go with that name. But for now, the only party, the other party that's complied is Wiper.
Okay, let's have okay, that's
Mr.
okay.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you need to protect me from the member for Kwanza. He has many years to be the leader of majority. He has many years to reach where I am. And you have to learn, you have to learn to listen, to be decent, to be loyal, for you to be one day to be the leader of majority. You don't shout, I am respecting the leader of minority, so you have many years to go to reach where Bandi has reached. And even become a chair. Now you are going to become a chair of a committee. So I think he needs to respect us.
Well, I wouldn't want that to open this to debate, but I think in all fairness, we could listen to the leader of minority party, and especially on the issue of whether you are able to bring the names before the time that we have agreed, and then the notice can be given. Honorable Mbadi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish Honorable Saronei, but I understand him because he's pretty new in Parliament, so he doesn't understand many of these things. But the bottom line is, for any motion to be brought to the House, that motion must be cleared by the House Business Committee. And therefore, that's why we have representation in the House Business Committee. Could have consulted Honorable Mboko Mulemba, who sits in the House Business Committee, or Makali Mulu, or myself, or Honorable Jeanette Mohammed, before he brought the matter to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, actually, we had our names, but the issue is that there are some controversies that have since arisen. And we hope that maybe by midday, we'll be able to solve them. And I hope, and I want to repeat, I hope my coalition will not be infiltrated as it has been infiltrated dangerously by the majority side, Mr. Speaker. Actually, it's the infiltration that is causing this problem. We actually had agreed, remember, even we came out publicly with my deputy, Robert Mbui, very able, honorable member, Junet Mohammed, and we had come up with names. But after that, there have been a lot of some interference, Mr. Speaker, and infiltration, which has now necessitated us to consult further. As a matter of fact, I was on top of things. We didn't need any teleconferencing at all. We didn't have to consult anybody.
Honorable Mbadi is on a point of order. Allow him to finish and probably.
Let me just finish. Actually, I didn't need the services of Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, or Musalia Mudavadi, or even Moses Wetangula. I was equal to the task. I held a meeting, successful meeting with my deputy and whip. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, after that meeting, some other people have infiltrated my coalition, Mr. Speaker.
You have, you have really repeated this
which
issue
is such a big threat.
Are you suggesting the leader of majority is now a field marshal that he has?
Having said that, Mr. Speaker, maybe on a serious matter,
yes, proceed.
Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to
I really want you to address yourself
yes,
as to whether you are able to, iron out the differences you speak about before midday, because really, you understand these are very important commissions.
Mr. Speaker, if interference will not come from any other quarter, Mr. Speaker, we are able, but with
Would you like me to ask a honorable leader of my majority not to interfere at all?
please, I wish he could stop
Unfortunately, I don't have the
If
power
he'd
for
stop,
now on that particular.
Mr. Speaker would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, but no, there was a point of order by the leader of majority. What was it? Because and that
Mr.
should,
Speaker,
that should
you have
be-
had the Honorable Mbandi. This is a house of record. And 10 years, 20 years from now, people will read. Can Honorable Mbandi tell the House, who are these infiltrators? Are they NSIS? Is it infiltrators within his coalition? Either he names those infiltrators who are infiltrating his coalition, or he withdraws and apologizes. Because, you know, you cannot give this House rumors and propaganda and what you see in the streets. Who are the infiltrators? If it is NSIS, the National Security Committee must investigate why they are infiltrating NASA. If it is any other member, then he must say, because he can just say that after I have complied and sent to the Speaker, some people infiltrated my coalition.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to...
Let's leave it.
Honorable Speaker, I think it is important, even if one brother is bigger and the other brother is smaller, it is important for respect, to respect each other. So for that reason, Honorable Speaker, for one reason, the budget-making process that is going to make this House be operational for the next one financial year, let them give us the members today and bring this matter to rest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That is taken, so let's leave it at that, really. Honorable Amalwa, this is something that we don't need to open up, because you speak and somebody else would want to respond, and this is something that you will have the time to debate tomorrow. Really, Honorable Amalwa, I know, I have not even given you the floor. But what is it, Honorable Amalwa?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do agree with what Honorable Badi has said, and the plans are at advanced level to bring our all-inclusive list. But I just wanted to clarify, maybe to Honorable Rachel, in line with Article 127 of the Constitution, I don't think it's a crisis. I know the budget policy statement was tabled, but in line with Article 127, we already have some existing commissioners, and unless they are replaced, if there's any function to be done, they'll continue doing that. So it's a point of information for the Honorable
Rachel. If it's a point of information, you would have given me that opportunity to ask her whether she needs the information.
No.
But now let's leave it at that.
It's good information for her to get to know that.
We'll go to the next order. Next order. No, not next order. Let's have Honorable Patrick Mariru. I think you have a notice to give.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give the notice of the following motion, that this House notes the report of the Kenya delegation to the 48th session of the ACP Parliamentary Assembly and the 34th session of the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly held in Port-au-Prince, Haiti from December 13th to 20th, 2017, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, February 21st, 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, very well. Let's have then Honorable Omar Mohamed Maalim.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that acknowledging that the Kenya Police play a very important role in providing assistance to the public when in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace, protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of criminal intelligence, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension of offenders, enforcement of laws and regulations with which it is charged, among other roles as provided for under Section 24 of the National Police Service Act. Concerned that many police officers across the country, especially those working in northern Kenya and other high-risk and hardship areas, continue to work under a very difficult environment, characterized by, among others, inadequate and inhabitable, deplorable and congested living quarters, insufficient tools for work, and poor salaries and allowances. further concerned that the difficult working environment for the police officers has been often led to frustration, demotivation, and occupational stress among officers, with many of them exiting the force in search of other jobs. This House urges the National Police Service Commission and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to provide salary incentives and adequate decent housing for police officers who are deployed to serve in northern Kenya and other hardship areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Next, that is Honorable Simon Kingara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. But before I give the notice to give a notice, please, Mr. Speaker, sir, this issue of some names not being around is taking us behind. So I wish the Honorable Bandi, who is very able, just to bring these 3 names. So since we came here as first-timers, we have been hearing of names not coming. Please let the name come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Kingara, you are completely out of order.
Thank you, Mr.
I want you to proceed to,
let me give
to
the
do
notice.
what you are supposed to do. Give a notice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
You are actually invading your colleague's notice.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Which he
Speaker.
has already given.
Okay. I stand to give give the notice of the foreign motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, that aware that Article 37 of the Constitution guarantees every person the right, peaceably and unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petition to public authorities, noting that there is a need to guarantee that the enjoyment of rights and fundamental freedoms by any individual should not prejudice the right and fundamental freedom of others, notwithstanding demonstration and picketing inside and majority towns in the country, particularly in Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, have many occasions resulted in destruction, loss of life and property, public destruction, and the creation of an unfavorable business environment. Noting that the rights and freedoms are not unconditional, because the government has a duty and a responsibility to ensure maintenance of peace and public order and protect the right, life, and property of all its citizens. This House resolves that the government should designate and gazette specific areas and streets for demonstration and picketing with a view to ensuring that individuals enjoy their rights and freedom as enshrined in the Constitution without infringing on the freedom and rights of others. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Adequate symptom management and care. Deeply concerned that cancer is the third highest cause of morbidity in Kenya after infectious disease and cardiovascular diseases in the country, noting that effective treatments require availability of specialists, chemotherapy services, essential drugs for pain management, and adequate infrastructure in treatment and avoidance of distance referral and delays in treatment administration. Further, that there is a need for clear policies concerning terminal pain management, financial and human resource support, palliative care, and cancer patients. This House urges the government to declare cancer as a national disaster and establish an establishment of cancer fund to cater for cancer treatment and care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let's have the next one. That is Honorable Muhammad Ali Mohammed.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motions. That aware that Article 43 of the Constitution provides that every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services, including reproductive health care. Further aware that in the post-2015 development agenda, the world has committed to universal health coverage, UHC, and achievement of sustainable development goals, provides that there shall be established in each county and National Health Referral Hospital Level 6. This House urges the government to fast-track the establishment of a National Health Referral Hospital in Mombasa County with a view to having a facility to cater for sophisticated diagnostic, therapeutic, and rehabilitative healthcare needs in the region, requiring more complex technology and highly skilled personnel, as well as support training of health workers at both pre-service and in-service levels. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Let's have the next one, Honorable Rashid Kasim Amin.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 33-1, I seek leave of the House for the purpose of discussing the rampant insecurity incidences in Wajir County and other parts of northern Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the recent killing and attack allegedly by the Al-Shabaab on Friday, February 16, 2018, in Karsa of Wajir East constituency led to the loss of lives.
Order, Honorable Amin. You did give the notice yesterday.
Yes.
And you actually given time to, you had given a slot to move it at 12 noon.
No. Thank you very much for giving me
let's be very clear on that, because as far as I can see, you already have been allocated time from 12 noon.
Okay.
Is that the position? Did you give a notice yesterday?
No, I'm to give the notice now for that allotment on midday.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, pursuant to Standing Order 3-1, I seek leave of the House for the purpose of discussing the rampant insecurity incidents in Wajir County and other parts of northern Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the recent killings and attack allegedly by the Al-Shabaab on Friday, February 16, 2018, in Karsa of Wajir East constituency led to the loss of lives of 3 persons, among them 3 teachers and 1 spouse. Further loss of lives of more than 18 persons on issues of clan conflict. Up to now, the perpetrators of this heinous act have not been apprehended by the government. Honorable Speaker, this has affected the public institutions and mostly the learning institutions where schools are facing imminent closure. This is of great concern in that it has been worsened by the declaration by NAT and QPET to withdraw and redeploy teachers who are non-locals from northern Kenya and affected areas. Honorable Speaker, it is for this reason and with more indulgence, Mr. Speaker, that I seek leave of the House in order to deliberate on this matter and explore a lasting solution to insecurity in Wajir County of northern Kenya and other parts of the country.
Okay. Let's see if you have the required support. That is confirmed, and therefore you will have an opportunity to have this at 12 noon. 12 noon. But in any case, you should be ready just in case we do not have sufficient business. It could come a little earlier, but 12 noon it is. Next order.
Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of business from the provisions of Standing Order 43.
Honorable Leader,
Honorable
Party.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move a procedural motion that this House orders that the business appearing in the order paper be exempted from the provisions of Standing Order 40, subsection 3, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or the minority party, or business sponsored by a committee. Speaker, this Standing Order 40, subsection 3, is the one that gives Wednesday mornings to be a day allocated for private members. And I'm sure my honorable colleague, Honorable Mbandi, is here. The House Business Committee last night, we have found out that the only motions available were the ones that were given notice of motion this morning. And there was no way they could be given notice of motion and then also being discussed today. So all those motions of private members will begin next week, Wednesday morning. And because of that, and then we realized that the House cannot be sitting without any business. We decided now to allocate part of the afternoon business for today and Thursday. And that's why procedurally, for us to do that, whether we need to seek leave of the House for us to discuss the other pending matters. So it's a very simple matter. I'm sure from next week, Wednesday, going forward, we'll be having enough motions and bills, either from committees or from private members. But for today, there's nothing in the kitchen from private members' business. So it's a small procedure motion, and I'll ask my colleague, Honorable Bandi, a member of the House Business Committee, to second.
Yes, Leader of Minority Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm just rising to confirm that indeed during our deliberations at the House Business Committee last evening, we realized that the private members' motions were not ready for processing this morning. And so, but there are quite a number of these motions coming up from next week, as the majority leader has said. So we just want the House to indulge.
Pursuant to the provisions of Section 43, subsection 4 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015 and paragraph 5, section 9 and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016. This House approves the list of nominees for appointment to Kitutu Chache South Constituency Committee of the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. And these are Matundura Godfrey Mose, male representative. James Maobe Mokaya, male representative. Kemunto, female representative. Melen Nyamanda Kebati, female adult representative. John Ongeri Ondiek, representative of the persons living with disability. James Orito Omonywa, nominee for the constituency office, male. And Pacifica, these are great names, Mr. Speaker. Pacifica Mora Onyango, nominee for the constituency office, female. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a constituency that came late. And Mr. Speaker, as I support, I'm wondering why there is no representative from the Muslim community. And there's a huge Muslim constituency in this population in this constituency, in Kisii town. So, Honorable Onyaka is not here, but I'll pick up with him that he cannot marginalize a serious segment. And I'm sure the people of Kisii, the Muslim community, are watching me.
But
they voted for him to the man.
But this is your motion, Leader.
It's my motion, I'm saying. It's my motion, but I'll talk to the member that, you know, Mr. Speaker, the office of Leader of Majority has puts you between a rock and a hard place. So, but I am sure I'll talk to Honorable Onyonka. He's a ranking member. I served with him in the 10th Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Onyonka's constituency was one of the constituencies that elections were not held in the 8th of August 2017. And because when we were passing all the other 289 constituencies, he was still campaigning and he was still looking for the seat. But I'm sure this House will be very fair to him if we pass this list and then the board and the ministry gazette it so that he can now have time to deal with the matter of his constituency. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury, Mr. Speaker, I saw something in the news, has been releasing close to 2 billion shillings every week diligently to the board. So there's enough money at the board. But I talked to the CEO of the board yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and I don't know why the chair of CDF is not here. the board confirmed to me that over 80 constituencies have not submitted their project proposal. Over 80 constituencies. Speaker, that is an indictment on us, the leadership. If your constituency is one of the 80 that have not submitted, then I don't know how else do you want to serve your people. CDF is a very, very important, Mr. Speaker. You are a sitting member of a constituency. So, colleagues, I really want to indulge you that please let's submit. The rest that have submitted, the board is approving the project proposal as they come. And I am sure in the next 10 days, we must have at least 50% or 30% or 40% of the CDF fund for 2017-2018 budget be in our accounts. Number two, Mr. Speaker, and very, very, very important also is there was a certain amount of the CDF allocation that was not factored in the supplementary budget estimates of 2017. And we are telling both the CDF committee of this House and the budget committee that when the Minister for National Treasury appears before you, you must now regularize that item so that each constituency can get its 105, I think, million shilling. So I think those of you members who serve in the budget committee, those of you who are in the CDF committee, and all of us together, because we are going to approve the budget policy statement and the budget in this House, let us make sure that through the current estimate, we bring back the supplementary, the money that we lost in the supplementary. But I am sure the Speaker, CDF is great, and I'm sure all of us, now that we have a committee of this House dealing with those matters, they must up their games and make sure that they protect the interest of this fund for the benefit of our constituencies and our voters. Speaker, I beg to move and ask the only surgeon, one of the very few surgeons in this House, Honorable Pokosa, to second.
There are actually three. We have this one and we have, I'm sorry, I'm referring to gynecologist instead. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, just for the records, is that I'm the only surgeon in the Kenya Parliament, both in the Senate and the National Assembly. The other ones are either gynecologists, pediatricians. We also have herbalists in the House. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to second the motion by the leader of the majority.
Well, it's good that you did not even talk about Rundikiri's business, because that is different. That's completely different. That is a very specialized surgeon.
Mr. Speaker, I want to second this motion on the appointment of the CDFC members to the Kitutu Church South constituency, Mr. Speaker, having elected their member of parliament after the other constituencies had done so. And Mr. Speaker, this will also enable them to operationalize their activities as soon as possible, because the people of Kitutu Church South constituency, Mr. Speaker, need to be able to present their proposals for the approval for the CDF projects. They also need to be able to utilize their funds, and they need development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, CDF and NGCDFC performs important functions, Mr. Speaker. And just as the majority leader put it, the 15 million per constituency that was omitted in the supplementary budget is key to us in terms of doing some projects within our constituencies, Mr. Speaker, because that is money that we initially had budgeted before the CDF board even came up with now some areas in the constituency where they wanted now every constituency to come up with 4 ICT centers. They also want, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. So I propose a question which is pursuant to standing with provisions of section 43(4) of the National Government Development Fund Act 2015 and paragraph 5, 9, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016, this House approves the list of the nominees for appointment to the Kitutu Churches South Constituency Committee of the National Government Constituency Development Fund, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018, as follows. 1, Matundura Geoffrey Mose, male youth representative. James Maobe Mokaya, male adult representative. Winfrida Kemunto Maisiba, female youth representative. Melen Nyomenda Kebati, female adult representative. John Ongeri Ondiek, representing the persons living with disability. James Orito Omonywa, nominee for constituency office, and Pacifica Mora Onyango, nominee of the constituency office. I would ordinarily put the question because we really don't need to spend a lot of time on this, because it's only the member of parliament from specific areas that would have, would know probably some of these members. So therefore, seeing that we have member for Kitutu Churches South constituency, he's the only one I'm going to allow him to have a shot on this one. The rest of the members cannot pretend that they know these particular people, Now, this is a very specific issue. This is a very specific issue. So other issues of CDF really can be canvassed in different forums. Yeah, but, well, I might consider, but let's have the member for Kitutu South, Kitutu Churches South constituency, Honorable Onyonka.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to, first of all, thank you for allowing me to say one or two words, two things about this list. First, I want to mention that the reason why the names of Kitutu Churches South constituency have been brought to the floor of the House this late is because, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, I had to go for a by-election, which was delayed because we lost one of the candidates. Actually, the Jubilee candidate had died. Therefore, as a result, the elections were postponed. And as a result, our elections took place in November. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to also respond in a very subtle manner to what the Leader of Majority said. Even when the law doesn't require from me as a patron or require to this House to either have nominees brought onto the floor, onto this list because of their religious situation, I would like to say that it was actually an oversight. It is true, and I think the reason why Honorable Duale mentioned the issue of us not having a Muslim is because he knows that Kitutu Churches South constituency, which is basically in Kisii town, is the one which has got all the 3 mosques within that area. And I do promise, Mr. Speaker, that we will make sure that we follow up and bring a Muslim in order for us to have fairness and equity. I also wanted to say that, Mr. Speaker, the individuals that we have put on this list are people of integrity, they are people of credibility. I have worked with them for the last 10 years, and I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the performance of the Kitutu Churches South constituency, government CDF, is actually what made the people of my constituency to vote for me. We have done well. I believe that CDF is a wonderful fund. I believe that we must jealously protect it in this House. I believe that members of parliament will make sure that their fund works well and make sure that we deliver to the public. I don't have much to say, Mr. Speaker, but I wanted to ask members of this House to actually approve these names, because it will make it easy for me now as a member of parliament to start my job of oversighting the utilization of the funds which are available within my constituency.
Yes.
With those very many words, Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank all of you. Thank you.
Very well. I will just give another extra member who has been very insistent. Now let's have the member for Imenti South. But it has to be on this specific
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to support this motion. And also I did not get any opportunity to congratulate my friend and colleague, the MP for Kitutu Church South. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as much as this is happening now, and this committee needs to be gazetted as soon as possible, so that they can also give their proposals for on-one transmission to the board, and so that also it can be in the group that will get this money as soon as possible to develop the constituency. But Mr. Speaker, as the Honorable Majority Leader said, because these proposals have been, they have been approved by the board, I do not think that also the Treasury does not release this money in one batch. Therefore, I really would request, humbly request the CDF board to consider to start remitting these funds to the constituencies which have been approved, and that there is money already from Treasury, so that, Mr. Speaker, our constituents can start now also getting this money from bursaries. Like my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I am really in a hot soup because of bursaries. We have so many children in school, so many needy cases, but still from January we have not been able to remit the bursaries to the students. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think the board and the chairman CDF committee will be able to expedite this matter so that we can really move forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Okay. So I will put the question, which is that pursuant to provisions of Section 43(4) of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015 and paragraph 5, 9, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016, this House approves the list of nominees for appointment to the Kitutu Chache South Constituency Committee of the National Government Constituency Development Fund, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. 1. Matundura Geoffrey Mose, male youth representative. James Maobe Mokaya, male adult representative. Winfrida Kemunto Maisiba, female youth representative. Melen Nyomeda Kebati, female adult representative. John Ongeri Ondiek, representing the persons living with disability.
Setting of standards to achieve the progressive realization of the rights guaranteed under Article 43, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, before us today, we are having to deal with that particular provision in the Bill of Rights, and I think this House is given a chance to ensure the realization of this particular right to housing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that the current government, the Jubilee government led by His Excellency the President, has come up with 4 pillars that they want to run with in the next 5 years, Mr. Speaker. And they have come up with an ambitious pillar of putting or building 500,000 houses, affordable houses, within the next 5 years, Mr. Speaker, both in the main cities and other small towns across the country, Mr. Speaker. It is hoped, Mr. Speaker, that this particular pillar will afford the creation of 350,000 jobs within that period, Mr. Speaker, which is also seen as one way of ensuring that we take care of the many jobless young people that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the last parliament, I was lucky to have been in the departmental committee of transport and housing. Then it was called transport and housing, Mr. Speaker. And we got a chance to visit Brazil. And when we went to Brazil, we learned of a very important thing that the then president and the government had done. They had come up with a program called Minha Casa, Minha Vida, Mr. Speaker, which means my house, my life. And through that project that was started in 2009, they had been able, by the time we visited them in the last parliament, which was around 2015, Mr. Speaker, they had been able to house 10.5 million low-income earners that they had been able to place in 2.6 housing units, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we as a nation have got to do the same in order to be able to take care of the low-income earners, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this policy aims at ensuring that they spell out the roles of the various stakeholders in the housing sector, namely the national government, the county governments, the private sector players, so that they know the role of each of these stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this policy has identified the major gaps that are bedeviling the low-income earners insofar as housing is concerned, one of them being the fact that the low-income earners cannot afford mortgage. And this is because in Kenya, housing is very expensive, as most member policy does actually identify the fact that there's a gap in terms of even land, availability of land at the right places, close to the workplaces of these low-income workers that can be used to build these houses. So one of the things the government will be doing is to make sure that they demarcate land that is closer to the working places for these low-income earners so that they can be able to get to their workplaces without having to spend too much in terms of the high cost of the same. Mr. Speaker, these low-income earners cannot access financing for their houses. And when they do, it is too expensive for them. So the government has to find a way of making that possible, Mr. Speaker. Then, of course, there's a big gap in terms of us identifying and appreciating low-income technology of building, Mr. Speaker. We need to come up with construction technology that is cheaper than we already know it. We know that most of the countries, like, in Singapore and other places in China, they are building houses, Malaysia, with low-cost technology that is faster and cheaper, and that way we are able to access these same houses to the low-income earners, Mr. Speaker. And then the policy also identifies the lack of a legal framework that will allow the smooth running of this whole sector that aims at taking care of the poor, Mr. Speaker. So, and the poor management of public housing is also identified as a major gap that really needs to be looked into. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, when we pass this particular policy, we are giving the room for the ministry, the government, to bring a national social housing fund that will come here for us to debate it and pass it, and come up even with a National Housing Act that is more friendly towards the low-income earners. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking this House to kindly pass this particular policy, because then it opens doors for many other things that will need to be done, and then we can begin to build the 500,000 houses, Mr. Speaker. The only thing I would like to say is that as we do this, there will definitely be a need of coming up with a formula of identifying the beneficiaries of these houses, Mr. Speaker. In the past, we have seen houses meant for the low-income earners going to high-income earners, the well-positioned in government, the high officers in government, and so we hope that this time, for sure, if it is meant for low-income earners, it goes to low-income earners. And when we get to the point of low-income earners, we want a percentage of these houses to be identified for women, Mr. Speaker, and especially so single mothers who have families and need to have houses for their families, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I
Very well. Honorable members, I will propose a question, which is that this House adopts session of paper number 3 of 2016 on the National Housing Policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, February 15, 2018. Honorable Manzo. Order, Honorable Manzo. What is it? Point of order, intervention by Honorable Gikaria. Is it a... Yes, you have pressed the intervention button. Honorable Manzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important sessional paper, and wish to state that sessional papers inform policy, and policy inform the House on the making of the law or the necessary legal amendments, Mr. Speaker, we need to make for the benefit of the country. I want to say that the housing sector was boosted by the 2010 Constitution, whereby it becomes part of the rights of every citizen of Kenya to decent housing, decent water supply, and a decent sewerage system. And all of them are combined. I would like to concentrate, Mr. Speaker, on the part of the development policy which government has put in place in the Vision 2030, that in the regime of President Kibaki, there was a very active system of making sure poor people in Kenya access housing. There was, and it still goes on, the upgrading project in the Kibera slums and many other low-income areas in Kenya. And part of what the challenge was identify the people who are there, and then identify where the people will be moved to, and even the land utilization, Mr. Speaker. One of the areas I would like to concentrate on in this contribution is the role of cooperatives in housing. Most cooperatives are now known to provide, which appears in this report, most cooperatives are known to provide the land, and there are many housing cooperatives which also deal with the land and are able to provide land, which is the basic mechanism of one be able to construct. And these cooperatives have also made an improvement so that they are providing housing. They are developing the land they have acquired as a cooperative
on a long-term tenancy purchase. Honorable Speaker, allowing the government to be able to, county governments to be able to put up rental houses. Mr. Speaker, that would never help this country where me as a person or a young person or a young couple can be able to own a house and be able to pay at a reasonable. So, Mr. Speaker, the sessional paper regarding the National Housing Corporation, we really need to look at it very critically. The environmental, social impact assessment reports ought to be given whenever any investor is coming up with housing, building of housing schemes, so that again we don't end up affecting the environment. We have seen where people have built houses in very low places, and so getting sewage. So what happens is that sanitation and connecting to a sewage treatment works, plant, becomes very difficult. It's because they are not. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this, I think we also need to look at it very critically and be able to scrutinize more so regarding funding, especially like what has been said about NSSF. It's a very good idea. 10% of National Social Security Fund be given at a very cheaper rate to people who want to come. So it's something that we really need to look into, Mr. Speaker. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Very well. Shall we have Honorable Martin Owino, member for Diwa?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very
important motion for me, especially with my background on health. These people, Mr. Speaker, with so-called low income, are all distributed across the country. And I would like to see where we go down on urbanization of buildings and spread also to the rural areas. These low-income people are the ones who host people who are jobless. In fact, it's the opposite of the affluent community. Can stay with 10 or 5 people in the house. So I want to bring to the attention of the regulation of these houses. For example, you can't put 5, 6 people in a family in a 10 by 10 room. I think we need to also add, to affordable, we need to add adequate housing for the low-income population. In the developed countries, they have developed another strategy, Mr. Speaker, that requires 30% of low-income person to go directly in repairing the rent. And I think we need to adapt that. Once that is implemented, it may also prevent the idea of renting a house once you have been allocated. It's working very well in those developed countries, and this is an issue of the past. Also, I would like to advocate for the improvement of local materials. We still have a lot of quarry, a lot of locally manufactured materials, but we are not giving them attention. It can drastically reduce the pricing of houses. I support the National Housing Fund with structures and with policies, so that when we implement them, we have things like playground, which was mentioned here. Mr. Speaker, in the health realm, autistic children number is coming up because they are very inactive and they have nowhere to play. If the housing is poor, be rest assured we are going to pay a lot of it in health sector. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, because I want to yield more time to members, in my constituency, which is in Dewa, 16% housing is still leaking because they are thatched. And unfortunately, they belong to widows who host orphans. On my private initiative, I'm building a lot of them, and I know my friend, Honorable Tiendamolo, is also doing some in Rarieda. I would like a situation where these vulnerable members of the communities are also considered in the low-income earners, because they also earn from the roadside selling vegetables. Let us not define low-income earners only by payroll, but also household income. I would like this to be extended to the Ndiwa community, the 16% widows who are having leaking roofs to also enjoy in the so-called 500,000 housing to be initiated. I don't think Ndiwa is alone. It's across the country. So if we do it well, it will also prevent, somebody said here, our honorable member said here, it will prevent migrating from rural area to urban in search of jobs and also good housing. Let us move these goodies also to the rural areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the time.
Let's have, because of Jeddah, have Honorable Obo Mohammed, member for Lamu.
Asante Bwana Spika. Nimeshukuru umenipatia hii nafasi na mimi kuchangia katika hii sera ya manyumba. Kwa ruhusa yako naomba nisome kidogo katiba inavyosema kwa lugha ya Kiingereza. Inasema the Constitution states that every person has a right to access and adequate housing and to reasonable standard of sanitation. Further, in Article 21(2), it states that state shall take legislative policy and other measures, including the setting of standards to achieve the progress realization of the right guaranteed under the Article 43. Bwana Speaker, hii policy au sera ni muhimu sana. Sahi Lamu East kuna barabara inajengwa. Barabara hiyo inatoka Mtangawanda inaenda Kizingitini. Ni maendeleo mazuri, twafurahia. Lakini kama katiba inavyosema hapa, inasema watu wakuwe na manyumba. Kule manyumba zinavunjwa na sio kwamba manyumba yamefuata barabara. Barabara ndio imefuata manyumba, na pia zimechorwa alama ya X. Watu wametishika sana, hata bodaboda ikipita watu wanaona ni tractor inakuja kuvunja manyumba. So sera hizi ni muhimu sana zipitishwe, isikuwe na kunyanyasa watu na kuwe na haki za kibinadamu. Kama sahihi minazi kule inaambiwa minazi peke yake ndio italipwa, na inalipwa 3,000 kwa kila mnazi, ardhi haisabiwi. Wakikata mwembe au mkwaju au mkorosho haisabiwi. Watu wananyanyaswa sana, na serikali inafanya bidii kuleta miradi, na sisi tupenda miradi, lakini wale wanaokwenda kule ground ndio wanatuharibia. Wanatufanya sisi wabunge wa Lamu tunapata shida. Watu wanaona sisi pia tuko kwa serikali, sisi ndio tunachangia mambo hayo. Na ukisema kitu kuhusu contractor, kwa nini wanafanya hivi, na engineers, unaonekana pengine unapinga miradi ya serikali. Sisi watu wa Lamu hatupingi miradi ya serikali, na wabunge tumeshirikiana kuwasaidia wananchi. Ndio maana nikaona hapa leo niwaelezee hii policy ikifanywa bidii. In fact, ilikuwa inafaa iwe kama mwaka mmoja kabla iwe imepita. Ndio haya mambo kama ya Lamu yanatokea yasitokee. Sisi watu wa Lamu tunapenda sana miradi, lakini nataka iangaliliwe kwamba wale wanaokuja kule ndio wanaharibia serikali. Ndio maana Lamu kila wakati watu wanasema tuko marginalized, tumetengwa, tumefanywa hivi, na usababisha hasira na
the houses is so bad in Kenya. So according to me, we look at the tax incentives that can really encourage more Kenyans to own houses, as opposed to having individuals acquiring houses and they start reselling the houses. The Constitution of our great nation, Kenya, Chapter 4 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in Article 43, is that every person has the right to accessible and adequate housing and to reasonable standards and sanitation. Because of the shortage of houses in Kenya, you find private developers. They are coming in handy and use shoddy materials, use shortcuts to come up with houses, which they risk the life of our Kenyans who have migrated from the rural to city because of resources that they are looking for better living standards. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to propose that we accept this sessional paper number 16 to be implemented. Thank you.
Should we have Honorable Mutemi, member for Mwingi Central? Okay, that seems to member for Mwingi Central. Incidentally, the next one is actually from the same county, I guess. Honorable Guna, member for Mwingi West. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to support this timely and critical motion on housing policy. Allow me to say that this motion should have really been passed a long time ago because of the situation we have been facing in our slums and also in recent or other crimes in our slums. Let me say that it is in line with the President's agenda, 4 agendas, proper housing, and at the same time, the policy is in line with the IMF, or rather, the Vision 2030, which was outlined clearly. Let me say that if we adopt this very well, number one, it is going to alleviate overcrowding, especially in our cities, in our urban cities. And I think it is very important we adopt this motion on low-cost housing. It is also going to allow our local, or rather, to attract our local investors. As you all know, most of the houses in Nairobi and also in urban cities, they are owned by foreigners. And if we access this local, cheap kind of policy, we are going to attract local people to own the houses. Number two, or rather, another advantage, we are going to improve the community, the health of the community, upgrading our slums to a better and proper sanitation. We are going to increase that community health. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to be this brief and support this motion. Thank you very much.
Of course, we must prioritize the senior, Honorable Angwenyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute this important motion. Mr. Speaker, the issue of housing in this country is a big issue. And I believe that's why our president has identified housing as one of his big 4 agenda. Mr. Speaker, Kenya at one time had adequate housing for our people. I remember in the 70s and early 80s, this country had adequate housing for our people in towns. That's a time when National Housing Corporation and HFCK were very busy constructing houses in our towns. I remember that after I finished university and I got a job, I bought my first house in my first year of working at Otiende. At that time, a house was going for 18,000 shillings in Otiende, a 3-bedroom house. Today, that house will cost you more than 2-3 million shillings. Because we have left the construction of houses to real estate agents, to people who want to make money, even from the low income earners.
Order. Honorable member, you can't possibly cross the floor like that. You have to go up to the bar and
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Maybe we should go for another induction. But Mr. Speaker, this account, we don't have to create we don't have to invent a wheel. There are countries which have constructed houses for their citizenry, adequate housing for their citizens. And some of them, and particularly one of them, borrowed word for word the policy of housing from Kenya. That's Malaysia. Malaysia borrowed almost word for word our housing policy in the 70s. And they implemented it to the fullest. And now, today, Malaysia is one of the few countries that have got adequate housing for all their people. If we decide to improve the materials that we use in construction.
Honorable Kasim, this is the second time in 2 minutes. In actually 1 minute, you have done the same mistake.
What is he doing?
You are forgiven, but honestly, it doesn't matter who he was consulting.
the rules are clear. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we should pass this thing, policy paper like yesterday. And we make sure our implementation committee ensures that that policy is implemented to the letter. And that when we are going to construct 500,000 houses in this country, they should be distributed to various
necessary duplication. The Speaker, I want to urge that we also now need to bring forth that bill so that we result in one tribunal that will address business and private tenants. Mr. Speaker, I also want, at some appropriate time as a House, we may need to refocus on this. As we look at rural housing, one of the issues that come with rural housing are the facilities and amenities, principally water, principally electricity. And in this country, what will help us out ultimately is solar energy. We have a restrictive regime of laws that appears to encourage us only to get electricity from dams and such other places through the national grid, and appears to restrict those who want to invest in solar energy at any level. We will need to re-examine this so that we encourage everybody to invest in solar energy as a necessary complement to rural housing. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, there is the question of expired leases, principally in Nairobi, but generally in this country. Given the regime of laws that we have, almost all the leases that were granted about 100 years ago, and there were 99-year leases, have come to expire. I'm aware that in the last 3 years, and it's a problem that is continuing, most of those persons whose leases have expired are unclear on what to do. And some of them are suffering the fate of unscrupulous persons identifying their land and then purporting to now renew it in their own names. We will need to infuse, and that is not sufficiently infused in this policy, a very clear policy that does not encourage land grabbing by identifying the leases that have expired. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that is what is happening now. That is yet another area we will need to focus on. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Shall we have Honorable Mambonga Mwambu, member for Bumula?
The slums we see around here may be even better than those camps. You talked of a curtain partitioning the house, but I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, and then move with the speed to ensure that we implement. It's true that we have quite a number of very nice policy papers lying into the shelves, and the private developers are taking advantage of that. So as a House, we need to come up with proper legislation to ensure that people who are doing this, especially the private developer, yes, they're doing a good job, but is there a way of ensuring that the government monitors everything that they are doing? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, you realize that somebody talked of a mindset. Actually, everything that we do is right in our minds. It generates from our minds. How many people are being transported from home to urban areas looking for employment? And thereafter, some houses have already been constructed. But you see a slum coming just in the neighborhood. And it's not only in the urban areas. Go to the rural village where we come from, as Wakil has just put it. Even in my village, you realize that we have quite a number of slums, yet we have no powers over it. And the Wananchi believes, Mr. Speaker, that the Member of Parliament has a solution for everything. Is there a way we can sit down as a House and come up with a proposal that we can be able to respond to this problem that is affecting more Kenyans? This being a basic thing, we need also to treat it with the urgency it deserves. I raise to support, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for giving me an opportunity.
Allow me to give the only honorable lady who is in the system, Honorable Ongera Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak. And Mr. Speaker, since I'm speaking for the first time in the National Assembly, having moved from the lower house to the upper house, Mr. Speaker, I hope you'll give me an opportunity to speak uninterrupted. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank the good people of Kisii County who gave me an opportunity and who elected me overwhelmingly so that I could be their women rep. I thank them for the confidence that they bestowed in me, and I promised them, as I said in my election manifestos, that I shall be the bridge of hope for them, for the women, the youth, persons with disability, the girl child, and now the boy child, who is also, Mr. Speaker, for the first time, vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, I begin by looking at this session paper, of which, Mr. Speaker, I support, by first of all noting that, Mr. Speaker, we have passed very many session papers in this Honorable House, and yet, Mr. Speaker, these session papers always find themselves in the archives of memory. I hope, Mr. Speaker, as we adopt this sessional paper on national housing policy, which is very important, it will not find itself in the archives of memory. Because, Mr. Speaker, this country is bereft with many sessional papers that have been passed since 1963, and they are always thrown into the archives of memory. Mr. Speaker, I'm very passionate, and I want to commend all my colleagues who have supported the notion of rural housing. Mr. Speaker, as you know, our houses in the rural areas are houses whose standards are deplorable. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, as this session of paper is being considered, those who sit on the other side representing government are going to look into ways in which we can improve the rural housing. Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can, for example, introduce microfinancing, cooperative societies, through cooperative societies, to help the poor and vulnerable who are not able to afford to build affordable housing. With this, Mr. Speaker, will be issues of clean water and sanitation. As you know, Mr. Speaker, this is SDG number 7, and it is a very important SDG in the rural houses because we know that without clean sanitation is a problem. I know, Mr. Speaker, for example, in Northeastern, this has seriously become a problem because of the high water levels. You find that the toilets and the houses are too near each other, and because of the poor sanitation being offered, you find that there is a serious problem in having clean water in these areas. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, another issue that I wanted to contribute to into this House, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of slum upgrading. Mr. Speaker, as the Deputy Minority Leader, who I respect and is my senior, spoke about the government's policy, which I hope they will implement and they are serious about. One of them, Mr. Speaker, that should be considered is the question of slum upgrading. A policy had been started in slum upgrading, Mr. Speaker, which ended up dismally. Nothing was ever done. The poor who were supposed to get these houses, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, they did not get these houses. Instead, Mr. Speaker, who got these houses are the rich. The cream of Kenya are the ones who are occupying these houses. It is a shame, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the National Housing Corporation is one of the corporations that shall be looked at and shall be properly reconstructed, Mr. Speaker, with the aim of ensuring that the houses that they are constructing are houses that can be occupied by the poor. If we are talking about tenant purchase, let it be really tenant purchase for the poor. Let it not be tenant purchase for the cream of this society, for the cream of Kenya, so that, Mr. Speaker, our very poor, the vulnerable, can be able to get these houses. Mr. Speaker, as we consider this policy, I'm glad to note that the issues of housing for the vulnerable.
We have a lot of problems in housing. And what I would wish to say is that the government should encourage high-rise building, a building that consists of more than 10 floors. This one will ensure that the available land, which is very scarce in all major towns, is being utilized well. And when I talk about this, I would say that it will also help reduce land grabbing, because these land grabbers, mostly they do it for their own personal gain. They use the land to build rental houses and business houses, which are very expensive for the common mwananchi.
Interrupted at that point. You remember, honorable members, I want to remind us 2 points. One is that this, you may assume your seats, honorable member, for a minute. You remember this session of paper, the House resolved that we will debate for 3 hours. But also you remember there was a motion on a definite matter of urgent national importance that was raised by Honorable Rashid Kasim yesterday, and the notice filed this morning. And the slot given, the time given was that that matter will be discussed at 12 p.m. It is now 12 p.m. However, honorable members, it's good to note that we have a balance on this particular motion on the national housing of 1 hour, 40 minutes. So you still have the time at a subsequent time to discuss the same policy for 1 hour, 40 minutes. Honorable Gadiro, you have a balance of 8 minutes. When this debate resumes, and if you are here, you will have a balance of 8 minutes, because you have now to shift to this matter because it is 12. Now, Honorable Rashid Kasim, member for Wajir East. Honorable members, you remember, he requested for adjournment on definite matter of urgent national importance to discuss the state of insecurity in Wajir County of northern Kenya and generally other parts of the country. And members will have the liberty and the space to contribute and engage and debate on this very, very important matter. I will not be proposing or even putting a question on this matter. It is just opportunity for members to engage on such an urgent, important national matter. Honorable Rashid Kasim, if I could remind you, you have up to a maximum of 10 minutes, and any other member who discusses the same issue, who gets to the floor on the same issue, has a maximum of 5 minutes each. Honorable Rashid Kasim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to move this motion, which is of definite matter of urgency, in regards to the state of insecurity in Wajir County and in parts of northern Kenya and as the country as a whole. Thank you for allowing me this time, because I remember yesterday there were a bit of hiccups, and I really do appreciate in terms of your concerns, which have allowed me to do this. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, let me be able to say here clearly before I proceed with this, what prompted me to do this. On 16th of January, or on the 16th of this month, 2 teachers in my constituency were killed and his wife were killed by Al-Shabaab. And one other teacher was equally, who was a local, was equally injured severely by the same militia, armed militia. And on the same, there were quite a number of other scenarios and other incidences in Wajir County, particularly which are of clan conflict, which were clan in nature. And this has prompted me to bring this important notice and see how we can be able to abate the issue of security, which has been negating the development in the region. This is of a great concern to us, because insecurity is a great menace, and it has affected the livelihood of the people of the region. It has affected business. It has affected all institutions. And before I proceed on that, let me be able to give condolences to the families of the deceased, Olwoch, who comes from Migori, and his wife, Caroline, the dear ones, and Mr. Kevin, who also comes from Mount Elgon. These were 2 great civil servants, teachers who were serving on a noble profession and were educating the people of my constituents. They don't deserve to die. Let me condemn this incident, which has negated education. It has negated all our livelihood in the region, and I want to condemn in the strongest possible terms that they don't deserve to die. Any other civil servant or any other pastoral community or any other Kenyan do not deserve to die in the hands of armed militia. It is our responsibility as a nation to defend its people, it is to defend its properties so that we don't get and succumb to incidences of similar nature. Let me be able to narrate the incidences of 16th, which was indeed very bad. What we realized is that on the midnight of 16th, there were armed militia that attacked the town of Kalsa, which is a small town or a small settlement in my constituency towards the border of Somalia. In the middle of the night, they attacked the residence of the teachers. One couple and his wife were staying in one room, and a local, and as well as Mr. Kevin were in another room. It took the attackers to get access to the house where these two teachers were living for about 1.5 hours. They didn't get the support of any armed security apparatus. They didn't get the support. It took them 1.5 hours. The area was not manned by any security administration. It took them about 1.5 hours for them to access entry and kill and destroy those two teachers, the young, growing teachers. That was a very unfortunate situation. One thing we realized is that in northeastern, particularly the region that I come from, has a long boundaries with a long, impervious, and porous border with Somalia. This has allowed the infiltration of Al-Shabaab or Malaysia to come and infiltrate into the region and be able to cause maim and destroy our nature and our living. We as Kenyans, we should not allow Al-Shabaab and other armed militia which commonly infiltrate through this porous border to disrupt our peace and tranquility as Kenyans. Their attempts are not targeting non-locals. Their attempt is to target everybody, be it local or any other individuals in the region. Why they want to do that is they want to disrupt our way of life. We should not be able to succumb as Kenyans so that we change our lifestyle regarding this issue. So, gentlemen, I will be able to suggest, honorable members, that we need to devise appropriate means so that we can be able to cap these menace and other insecurities that are happening in the region. There are other incidences which have been able to go and record, where about 18 persons were killed in the last 1 month due to clan conflict, which has been on usage of resource use, particularly on water and pasture. These should not be uncalled for equally, and communities should not continue to make war against each other, and it should not be allowed to continue. They have been given specific reasons, because in debilitation of resources, which we think we realized, and in terms of water, and in terms of boundaries which they feel is a communal boundaries, should not be a responsibility for us to make killings against each other. One thing we have also been able to realize, Honorable Speaker, is that as we continue, that there is no appropriate policy over the years in terms of security in the arid and semi-arid districts of northern Kenya. There are not appropriate policies which have been developed in terms of recruitment, in terms of intelligence. It has not been done over the years. So what we recommend as a member, as a honorable member who comes from the region, is that the KDF, which are currently under the AMISOM and are in Somalia and are protecting our boundaries, one thing I will be able to suggest is that KDF should be strong enough to make sure that our borders are secure. Kenyans who are in the region, particularly along the boundaries, should be very secure and should feel very secure. They should have intelligence within the local community so that they can be able to access information regarding infiltrations of people and persons with ammunition into the area. One honorable Speaker, the Kenya Police Reserve, which operates in the region, is ill-equipped and ill-prepared in terms of equipment and training, which are relevant to this terrain. And one thing we have been able to observe is that there is no proper coordination between the intelligence service and the Kenya Police Service. Any information that is shared by the intelligence service is not properly communicated to the Kenya Police Reserve
so that they can be able to challenge any incidences that are like.
Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to take this opportunity to condole the families of those who are affected by the Wajir killing. And equally, I want to take this opportunity to console with the people of my county, Isiolo County. Mr. Speaker, sir, just on Sunday, we lost one person at a place called Gotu over the same sort of killing. Therefore, I console the entire family. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this killing is really gaining momentum. It is really spreading at a very serious rate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the killing, especially on the northern part of this country, used to be historical by nature. What I mean historical is that people, or rather the communities, used to fight over watering point. People used to fight over cattle raiding, cattle wrestling, which were an old sort of a practice. Mr. Speaker, sir, my concern now, his or her boundary is, therefore I find it very reckless when people are killing each other for such. Mr. Speaker, this new killing has more serious impact than even the old historical one we used to experience, in that it involves a large number of displacement. It has brought our countries and constituencies back many steps economically. Mr. Speaker, most of our schools are closing down. Mr. Speaker, that denies our kids their basic democratic rights by all measures, for lack of better words, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, just for the last 3 months, the county of Isiolo, we have lost more than 10 people that I can count and name by names. Mr. Speaker, the sad part is, no one is talking about compensation for these families, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is like nothing has happened. Somebody dies, we bury, and then life goes on, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to just quickly propose some interventions. We need more KPRs. We need these communities to be brought together to dialogue, Mr. Speaker. We need these communities have local structures on the ground. We need these structures to be empowered, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, issues of boundary, Mr. Speaker, should be given an immediate attention. It should be handled like today, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, sir.
You know, the Deputy Majority Leader is looking at me in almost suggesting, why am I not getting a chance? But you know, Deputy Majority Leader and everyone else, there is a screen here that speaks to me on who has actually registered interest to speak. And before that, I am completely unable to give anyone who is not in this screen. It is the one that guides me. So if you want to speak, please register your interest to speak. Yes, Minority Leader, before I come to you, allow me to give Honorable Tandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this motion. And Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that insecurity in this country has now become normal. Kenyans die each and every day in their 10s, in their 50s, in their 100s, and it is normal as if this country does not have a government. I would like to speak on this particular issue of Northeastern, specifically Wajir, because members of my community who are offering borderless professional services in those regions were the victims of this massacre. And Mr. Speaker, it is very, very painful because in this country, since we conducted elections, Kenyans have been dying in their hundreds. in my community, in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I have been able to bury at least 50 people because of insecurity in this country. And Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to hit the nail on the head and say that, Mr. Speaker, we have a cabinet secretary in charge of this docket who is more obsessed with politics than with the matters of security of this country. And Mr. Speaker, we must point him out and say that Mr. Matiang'i must either resign from this illegitimate government, or we have to find a way of pushing him out of this country, out of this position. Because if this country is going to survive, this country is not going to survive, Mr. Speaker, if Kenyans die the way they are dying.
Order, honorable member. What is it, Honorable Iringo Kubai, on a point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. My able colleague and MP, Mr. Honorable Atandi, has said that this illegitimate in government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I believe the government which is there which is in place is legitimate, was elected by the people of Kenya, and the president is sworn in, and the government which is in place is a democratically elected government, and therefore, in saying that it is illegitimate, Mr. Speaker, he is not in order, and he must apologize and withdraw that statement.
Honorable Attorney, do you actually say there is an illegitimate government in Kenya?
Mr. Speaker, when I speak in this House, I speak on behalf of my constituents. And Mr. Speaker, you are aware that when this government was elected, members of my constituency did not participate in that election.
Order, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker,
order, honorable member.
I rightfully admit.
Order, honorable Atandi. Did you actually say there is an illegitimate government in Kenya?
Mr. Speaker, my statements on the weaknesses of Mr. Matiang'i are being attributed to having referred to the government as illegitimate.
Order, honorable Atandi. The question is, did you actually say there is an illegitimate government in Kenya?
Mr. Speaker, I said there's an illegitimate man in office in charge of insecurity.
Order, honorable Atandi. Order, honorable Atandi. You know, as order, honorable Atandi, in as much as I want to be gracious to you and to any other member, there are some things that will not be allowed here. And I think this issue has been raised before in this House. There are things that are allowable, others are not allowable. There is from where I sit and from the issues that we have discussed here, and this has been raised before, there is a legitimate government, so anything else is absolutely out of the boundary. So I want to be gracious to you, Honorable Atandi. Please don't take that line. There is a legitimate government. Let us not take that line. And please don't engage in that line.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. Let me conclude my submission, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the minister in charge of security in this country is a man whose hands is full of blood. Because, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have been dying in their hundreds, and this minister is stuck in office. Some situations he comments, some situations he takes action, others he keeps quiet. So, Mr. Speaker, we must point him out and tell him that Kenyans are not going to allow him to continue in office if he cannot address the issue of security.
What is it, Honorable Resuda? I see you have an intervention.
Mr. Speaker, we know that for our members on the opposite side to be re-elected or elected, you have to abuse and to talk the way you're talking, yes, and abuse the government. But Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the honorable member?
Order, honorable.
I will have the floor.
Order, honorable Resuda. Honorable Sheriff Nasil. She is on a point of order, so you have to allow her to finish her point of order. Yes, Honorable Resuda.
So, Mr. Speaker, is the honorable member in order to continue to justify on what he has talked about illegitimacy and to continue to justify it before finishing with you whether he actually said it or not, but he's continuing on the same trajectory, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members, if it is on that particular, I can see there is quite a bit of interest on that particular matter particularly. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. I can see there is quite a bit of interest on that matter. I have said it very clearly. Honorable Atadi, and that he wasn't to take that trajectory, that tangent, because it's a dangerous.
Wananchi wa eneo bunge langu la Jomvu kwa kunichagua kwa mara ya pili katika bunge hili. Walinichagua mwaka 2013 nikiwa kijana mwepesi, wakanichagua mwaka 2017 nikiwa Garang de Mabiore mzee Fulangenge. Kwa hivyo nawashukuru sana wananchi wangu wa Jomvu. Alafu vile vile Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema kwa natoa rambirambi zangu kwa niaba ya wananchi wa Jomvu na mimi mwenyewe kwa watu wa Wajir kwa vile walipoteza maisha. Na nasema jambo kama hili si jambo ambalo latakana kuvumiliwa katika nchi hii ya Kenya. Na inaisihi serikali hii yetu ifanye juhudi zaidi kwa wale wananchi wa kule. Asante Mheshimiwa Duale, ni yetu sote, we can't deny that. Kwa hivyo nataka kusema kitu ya muhimu ambayo mimi nataka kukubaliana ni kusema kuwa wananchi katika sehemu ya Wajir hawatakikani hata mara moja kupoteza maisha yao. Na kwa maana hiyo tuwasema wanajeshi wetu wale wanaofanya kazi katika ile sehemu ya Mogadishu na sehemu nyingine katika nchi ya Somalia wahakikishe kuwa wanakuja katika boda zetu ili kuona zaidi ya kwa kuwa wanafanya kazi, lakini interest ya mwananchi wetu wa Kenya ndio ya kwanza kuliko mtu mwingine yoyote pale. Kwa hivyo jambo la muhimu ambalo nataka kulisema leo ni kwa kuwa jeshi letu la Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni lazima kuona kuwa katika ile boda ya Somalia na nchi yetu imethibitiwa kisawasawa ili kuona wananchi wale wanaweza kuishi katika njia nzuri. Nataka kusema kuwa uhalifu haujui dini wala haujui kabila. Kwa maana hiyo nataka kuzungumza kusema wale ambao watakuwa wanazungumzia kuhusu mambo ya terrorism kama mambo yanahusiana na dini ya Kiislamu ni jambo ambalo ni la uongo na ni jambo ambalo halipo katika fikra, kwa sababu dini yetu hairuhusu mtu yoyote yule kufanya makosa kwa mwanadamu mwingine yoyote. Na dini inahimiza usimfanyie mtu lile jambo ambalo wewe mwenyewe hutaki kufanyiwa. Kwa hivyo hawa ni watu ambao wanafanya uhalifu na ni muhimu wachukuliwe kama wahalifu wa kawaida ambao nchi ni lazima ijithibiti kuona kuwa namna gani watu hawa wataweza kuwashika ili watu wa sehemu mbalimbali kama vile Wajir waweze kuendelea na maisha yao. Tunaona kuwa hawa ni walimu ambao walikuwa wakitoa msaada mkubwa kwa sababu elimu ndio chombo kikubwa sana kwa maisha. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia hali kama hii ya kutarget walimu ni hali ambayo tutakana tuikemee sana, na tutaungana mkono na ndugu yetu Mheshimiwa Rashid Kasim na mimi mwenyewe mbunge wa Jomvu ambaye nasimama hapa. Nasema kuwa nampongeza kwa sababu ni katika mwezi uliopita tu tulikuwa Wajir na yeye katika kijiji kimoja ambao alikuwa akizungumzia kuhusu amani na watu kukaa pamoja. Leo ameleta hoja hii, ni muhimu sisi wabunge tumuunge mkono, na hata kama tuweze kushikana pamoja kuona kwa kwake kuna matatizo, tuende tusaidiane kama ndugu ili nchi ya Kenya iwe nchi moja kwa watu kupendana. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru kwa kunipatia nafasi hii, na Mwenyezi Mungu akijalia utanipatia nafasi pia katika ile mambo ya mjadala ya nyumba, kwa sababu nimebofya mpaka kidole kimesasa bonyea mpaka saa hizi, lakini ikabidi ni umenipa nafasi ya hii nyingine nikasema nashukuru. Kwa hivyo thank you very much and may God bless you all. Asante.
Yes, honorable member, on that motion there is a remainder of 1 hour 40 minutes on that policy that we had discussed earlier that will come at a subsequent time. I can see there is quite a bit of interest, but I'm afraid before the House rises, you remember there were indications that there will be a notice of motion to be issued by the majority leader. Majority leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that indulgence. I beg to give notice of the following motion, that further to the notice of motion I gave today at the commencement of the morning sitting, I beg to give notice that pursuant to Article 127, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the National Assembly approves the appointment of the Honorable Ben Momanyi, MP, a member of the National Assembly, to the Parliamentary Service Commission under subsection C, Roman 2 of the said article. Mr. Speaker, the House awaits nomination of additional 2 members under subsection C, Roman 2, Article 127, 2 of the Constitution, and 1 from each House, male and female. Speaker, if you allow me now to contribute to this very important adjournment motion brought by Honorable Rashid. Speaker, I am one person who suffered the brunt of terrorism more than anybody other leader in this country. In 2011, more than 11 people were killed in a church in Garissa. In 2015, over 145 men and women, the pride of Kenya, were killed in Garissa University. So, Mr. Speaker, I send my condolences to those teachers who lost their lives to that heinous act. But, Mr. Speaker, we can only fight terrorism when we are together as a nation. One of the cardinal principles of terrorists is to divide nations along ethnic and religious lines. We must not fall into that trap. And, Mr. Speaker, I saw the Teacher Service Commission CEO. When you withdraw teachers and you send a signal to withdraw teachers from that region, you are already falling into the trap of the terrorist. They want to make sure that any semblance of government does not exist in our region. So when today you remove teachers, tomorrow we remove health workers, the next day, in the end, you remove KDF. Mr. Speaker, let us learn from. As a country, we have lost our gallant soldiers in El Ade, in Somalia. But have we removed our KDF from Somalia? No. Unless we have a stable, free, and a stable country in Somalia, Kenya will not be very peaceful. Why our forces are in Somalia is to make sure that, working with other nations, they create a stable Somalia. Speaker, this government, since 2015, has reduced by 95% incidents of terror in Kenya and in the north. And I want to thank the people of Isiolo and those soldiers who intercepted that cache of arms which were being brought to Nairobi to cause a major terrorist attack. We want to thank, specifically I want to thank the current Director General of the National Intelligence Service. Since he took over, there is serious deterrent of terror attacks in our country. Him working with other intelligence officers from the international community. We want to thank the current leadership in the security forces, the Inspector General of Police, his 2 deputies, the Minister for Interior, and the PS, and all those people together, the CDF, the Minister for Defense, the service commanders. In the last 2 years, the investment this government, through this
Honorable members, the time being 1 minute after 1 p.m., this House now